In order to curb the development of China's new energy vehicle industry, the U.S. government officially announced a new policy on December 1st. Under this policy, Chinese-made new energy vehicles that use battery components produced or assembled in China or other countries will no longer be eligible for the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act starting next year. That means each vehicle loses eligibility for tax credits of up to $7,500. This measure is obviously intended to limit the sales of Chinese new energy vehicles in the U.S. market and protect its local new energy vehicle industry. However, not all countries are alert to the development of new energy vehicles in China. In the past year, Middle Eastern countries such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have poured into China's new energy vehicle market and established important strategic partnerships through large investments. Especially in June this year, Saudi Arabia directly ignored the warnings of the United States and signed an investment agreement worth $5.6 billion with China, becoming China's largest strategic investment partner in the field of new energy vehicles. But what is curious is why Middle Eastern countries such as Saudi Arabia value China's new energy vehicle industry so much. What changes and impact will this cooperation bring to Saudi Arabia? Welcome to Word Answer, where you will be able to learn about projects, cooperation around the world and important information about China. Subscribe to us and discover more interesting events around the world. Over the past decade, the development of new energy vehicles in China has made significant progress. In 2015, China's new energy vehicle sales reached 330,000 units, surpassing the United States for the first time and becoming the global leader in new energy vehicle sales. By 2018, China's production and sales of new energy vehicles reached 1.32 million units, accounting for more than half of the global market share and becoming the world's largest new energy vehicle market. Up to now, China's new energy vehicle industry has ranked first in the world for 5 consecutive years. In contrast, the market share of new energy vehicles in Western countries has dropped from more than 80% in the past to less than 50% now, and is expected to further decline to less than 30% by 2025. If China's new energy vehicles are allowed to continue to develop and expand, the new energy vehicle industry in Western countries will face tremendous competitive pressure. Against this background, Western countries have begun to find ways to impose severe sanctions on China's new energy vehicle industry. In the past year, the EU has imposed restrictions on the import of key raw materials for new energy vehicles, stipulating that imports from a single country must not exceed 65% of the total. Tariffs on new energy vehicles exported from China to Europe have also increased from 10% to 15%. At the same time, the EU also launched a countervailing investigation into new energy vehicles from China, which further suppressed the development of Chinese new energy vehicles in Europe. In addition to the EU, the United States has also imposed sanctions on China's new energy vehicles, including the launch of tax credit qualification sanctions on December 1st this year. But in fact, these suppressions have not had a negative impact on China's new energy vehicle industry. Instead, they have promoted cooperation between more countries and China in this field, and Saudi Arabia is one of them. In the past 2 years, Saudi Arabia has made multiple investments in China's new energy vehicle industry. Among them, in 2023, Saudi Arabia invested $100 million in China's Pony.ai. Soon after, Saudi Arabia invested another $500 million in China Tianji Automobile. In June this year, Saudi Arabia signed an agreement worth $5.6 billion with Chinese Express. According to the plan, China will establish a new energy vehicle production chain in Saudi Arabia to help Saudi Arabia increase its annual output of new energy vehicles from 15,000 to more than 30,000. In addition, the two parties will jointly establish a joint venture to engage in automobile research and development and sales. So, under the background that Western countries continue to impose sanctions on China's new energy automobile industry, why has Saudi Arabia strengthened its cooperation with China's new energy automobile industry? As far as I know, Saudi Arabia proposed an ambitious Vision 2030 plan in 2016, aiming to promote the country's comprehensive development and modernization, covering multiple fields such as economy, society, education, health, and technology. But to successfully implement this plan, Saudi Arabia needs to invest at least $1.4 trillion to build more than 5,000 large-scale infrastructure projects, including highways, ports, airports, and hydropower stations. Considering that Saudi Arabia is a desert country facing challenges of water scarcity and hot climate, this brings certain difficulties to the implementation of large-scale infrastructure projects. But despite the many difficulties faced in implementing the 2030 Vision Plan, there will always be some projects that are easier to implement, and new energy vehicles are one of them. According to the plan, Saudi Arabia needs to establish a complete new energy vehicle production chain by 2025. By 2030, its annual production of new energy vehicles needs to reach 300,000 units. Prior to this, Saudi Arabia had cooperated with Lucid of the United States to establish a new energy vehicle production line, but its annual production capacity was only 5,000 new energy vehicles. Although the production line was subsequently optimized and upgraded, with the production capacity increased to more than 8,000 vehicles, it was still unable to meet the needs of the Saudi Vision 2030 plan. To meet this need, Saudi Arabia began to seek cooperation with other countries. According to statistics, China will export as many as 5.365 million new energy vehicles in 2022, accounting for 60% of the global market share. More importantly, China's development history in the automotive field is very similar to Saudi Arabia, which can provide good help for the development of its new energy vehicle industry. Under this circumstance, China has naturally become an investment target for Saudi Arabia. In recent years, with the rapid development of China's new energy vehicle market and the continuous improvement of technology, more and more countries have begun to invest in Chinese companies. In addition to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates is also one of them. In 2022, the UAE will make a total strategic investment of approximately $1.1 billion in NEO through the private issuance of new shares and the transfer of old shares. On December 18 this year, the United Arab Emirates made an additional strategic investment of $2.2 billion in cash in NEO. After the transaction is completed, the UAE will hold approximately 20.1% of the total issued and outstanding shares of NEO. For China, it previously sold 400,000 new energy vehicles in the Middle East each year. Now that it can strengthen cooperation with Middle Eastern countries, China's new energy vehicle sales in the Middle East are expected to exceed 600,000, and it is also expected to become China's largest automobile export region in 2030. Prior to this, Europe was China's largest export market for new energy vehicles. According to statistics, 15 out of every 100 cars in Europe are new energy vehicles, 4 of which are produced in China, and this number is still increasing. This also made the EU realize that the rapid development of China's automobile industry has brought huge pressure to local companies, so it has taken some measures to suppress the new energy automobile industry. The most obvious example is that the European Union stipulates that from 2022, all new and new energy vehicles sold in the EU market must use charging equipment that meets European standards. On the other hand, the European Union stipulates that from 2026, all new and new energy vehicles sold in the EU market must use batteries that meet European standards. As the EU imposes increasing sanctions on China, the growth rate of Chinese new energy vehicles in the European market is relatively slow. In contrast, countries in the Middle East have not only expressed more friendly gestures towards China, but also welcomed them to build industrial chains in China. Against this background, China can shift its main export market for new energy vehicles to the Middle East. More importantly, by cooperating with Middle Eastern countries, China can expand its influence in the region. In recent years, the cooperative relationship between China and the Middle East has become increasingly close. Taking Saudi Arabia as an example, China has become Saudi Arabia's largest energy export market, and Saudi Arabia is also one of China's largest sources of oil imports. In addition, China has also actively participated in Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 plan and jointly promoted the construction of multiple highways, railways, and ports. In addition to Saudi Arabia, cooperation between China and Iran is also advancing steadily. According to statistics, China's daily oil imports from Iran have increased from 300,000 barrels in 2018 to 1 million barrels now. At the same time, China also reached a RMB swap agreement with Iran, further promoting the growth of bilateral trade and investment. In the future, as cooperation between China and the Middle East continues to strengthen, the prospects for cooperation between the two parties in various fields will be broader. In the past few years, Western countries have imposed multiple rounds of sanctions on Chinese chips, but these measures have not stopped the development of China's chip industry. On the contrary, China's chip industry has grown at an alarming rate in the past 5 years and is expected to surpass the United States to become the world's largest chip market by 2025. Now, Western countries have begun to adopt a series of restrictive measures on China's new energy vehicle industry, but these measures have also failed to affect the rapid growth of China's new energy vehicle market. On the contrary, China has also become the world's largest new energy vehicle market. Facts have proved that Western countries should abandon the wrong practice of suppressing and restricting China. Only through equal and mutually beneficial cooperation with China can both sides share interests.